Okay, so this may sound kind of muffled because I'm in the sleeping bag. And I know that like stuff like that can cause weird like background noises, but anywho, I've been meaning to make a video on some of my recent dreams for a while. Especially this one I had in about 8/20/25, maybe. I can't remember if well, no, that was around August. Whoa, wait a minute, let me pause this. It was around the early days of, it was around the whole welding attempt situation, which I talked about in one video and don't even really want to go back into because I feel it was kind of embarrassing. But I can say at least I tried. But yeah, I don't think I should talk about the clergy abuse dream for this video because like I'm focusing on like the more important stuff. But that dream was definitely really interesting, and it was when I was sleeping outside of this tech government something building or company or whatever. I guess maybe they're software developers, but I don't really know. But I was sleeping outside of there because it was near the welding place. But anywho, okay, hold up. I have other videos in the playlist of prophetic dreams and stuff. I know I talked about the dead boy trafficking thing in the New York earthquake, or at least I think I did. Which one of the traf dreams, that was 3/18/24. The New York earthquake was 12/13/24. I was actually in New York when I had that dream. Finding time whenever I could. Like, there was this like good spot that I found where like there wasn't a camera that could see over there, and like I was sleeping on the side of this like wall thing on the side of the escalator in the New York Port Authority. And I'm not gonna lie, there were a couple times where I woke up and there were like other people that had found that spot and were sneaking to sleep in there too. That was honestly like really horrible. New York needs storm shelters. Like, it's horrible for the people that stay there year round, and it's no wonder that like they split into schizo really quick there, and like the homeless people there are just like really broken, I guess I could say. I know like when people use terms like that, people see it as like an insult. I mean, I guess I could see how it could be insulting, but I just mean like extremely soul fractured and stuff from like being treated like crap. But I know some people always see things whatever way, but I mean, shoot, it could happen to me. But 7/16, let me pause this because I gotta hurry up and find. Okay, so the last video I made a dream about was from 7/9/25 when I had the dream of like some government military people. Like they were in one of those like secret rooms, maybe in the White House, maybe just like some base or something somewhere with like the high-tech stuff sitting at the table, and it was pretty blurry and fuzzy. But the one thing I remember hearing them saying is we should have never let the Middle East become a superpower. I almost got really out of breath saying that, but that was the last one I made a video about. So now I can start, because I wanted to like leave off of that because he's going to like Babylon fall and end times award type stuff. 12/25/26. Coming food shortage dream. Now I'm not gonna lie, none of this is really going to be anything that people want to hear, and none of this is like uplifting, but that's not really the point, because it's just about what the dreams are about, and not like me sugarcoating, which I'm not known to sugarcoat stuff anyways, and I'm already known to be pretty depressing. I was in a house, don't know what house, laying on the floor, starving, and that was pretty much my whole dream about the coming food shortage and all the stuff that's about to go down. Now, I'm not even gonna lie, this shortage and like trade war type stuff, this has been if it's even a word, longly, strategically planned. I would say even like since 2020, it really started then. From the fire, well, I don't even say fire, from them scaring away the people who worked the farms, immigrants and homeless, and that's the people that work the farms. Well, some people are like going through labor traffic, and I knew plenty of people in Cali who were going through that. When it comes to these like racial bullcrap farm jobs, like you can find these labor traffic things on Craigslist, but I mean, I'm sure people generally know that Craigslist is for traffic, and it lures in a lot of desperate people that really need places to stay and really need work. But anywho, they started doing that, and one thing that I can say as somebody that travels and like has met a lot of people and kind of likes talking, and people always feel comfortable telling me stuff, I can say that like a lot of people, they're used to a lot of like he say, she say, and people saying somebody claims this happened or the news claimed this happened. But I remember when I was in Cali and the farmers were being scared away from the farm jobs and there was nobody to work the farms, and the farmers were mad because of so many people leaving and going into hiding and trying to like get back across the border and stuff, or just hiding because of the laws being passed against homelessness. And people were talking about how the farms were empty, and I remember seeing the farms empty and seeing the heavily exploited people no longer being able to work the farms. And I even remember talking about this one guy who I saw a short clip about how he ran away at 13 or 12 in Cali, a really common thing to be honest. And at one point he was working on one of these farms for $5 an hour. And that's one example. Another thing is the tariff thing. Oh yeah, I didn't even mean to mention that. I meant to mention that as the third thing, because that's very recent. Another thing that people don't even talk about anymore, all of the not all of, but a lot of these what were they, like truckers and even like people that worked in maritime I don't know exactly what they call it, but pretty much like people that work for these transportation companies and like bring in food and different packaged things and these like cargo ships and stuff like that. A lot of those people are going on strike because one, they were underpaid. I don't remember if their pay got affected by the government shutdowns, but this was even before that anyways. Most of this, but pretty much they were going on strike because they were being used for human trafficking, and a lot of the truck drivers and even the maritime cargo transportation people were talking about how they're tired of like transporting people that are like in the cargo containers screaming and crying for help. And it's like, honestly, I can do that anyways, but people were saying stuff like, well, this sounds like bullcrap, and if they hear people screaming and crying for help, then like, wouldn't they just report it to somebody? And it's like, there's definitely nobody to report it to, but if you were able to get the stuff open, the most you could do is like open it. But then it's kind of like not that I feel like this part matters. I mean, this is something I've thought about when it comes to a lot of situations, like where do people go in the end. But I mean, the people that do escape these situations are bound to be homeless anyways because of they're definitely most likely not going to have vital records. They're going to have a lot of trauma. There is no help. So I mean, yeah, like, and then it's like, I mean, you let them out, especially when it comes to like the cargo people, you let them out to go where? And I'm not saying that I personally, if I was able to, wouldn't do it. I'm just saying, I mean, I would think about that. I mean, like, we're all on this boat, and then it's like we're on the water. But if you let the people out once you get to the other side, of course you're going to be seen by the higher-ups that you're transporting them to at, like, the dock. And then that's gonna, like, cause a lot of issues. I would think about that, but it's still kind of whatever. But anywho, all of that, and then the war that's going on, like, more overtly now. And then I know there's like the verses in Revelation about like the barley and the scale, and so what was I saying? Like, once the prices go up more, then that's going to be even worse, and then all that's going to contribute to the famine. And hopefully that came out good enough for people to understand. But like I said, my memory's kind of whatever. And so I just read that. Oh yeah, but I was talking about inflation, because like I said, I do have iatrogenic brain damage, and I cannot always remember exactly what I'm trying to say, but that's pretty much what I was talking about. The barley for the denarius thing. So all of that put together is going to lead to the coming food shortage. That's going to eventually be really overt. Oh, and I forgot to mention also that thing that was talked about more so a couple years ago, but especially starting in 2020, the farmland being bought up, or farmers being taken out for their land to be stolen, their farms to be shut down, and they were paying farmers to like shut down their farms, but now they're trying to say, oh, well, they want the farmland for the data centers. They were taking the farmland way before the data center stuff. And of course, I know the left-right mind hurting is fake, but like a lot of people, they try to make these things political, and they're like, since the Trump had got in office, but that was happening before that. And like people keep talking about, they're about to take him out anyways, because his role is just about up. And of course, the census was made by a Mason, and they've been even predictive programmingly showed that however many years ago that was when people were talking about that Simpsons episode. I remember seeing videos about it, but mind you, I don't watch TV, and I haven't since. I think I stopped around like 10, maybe a little younger. It's honestly kind of boring, and I think like this wasn't the reason why I stopped. It was because of like just things of my situation, like not always having a TV and stuff. And then like once I got the iatrogenic brain damage, I couldn't really focus on stuff like that. Like I get bored too quickly for even sitting down watching something. But I feel like especially due to the easy dopamine hits that people can get, like I mean a lot of people, they just watch YouTube, and cable been died a long time ago. But anywho, 12/28/25. So a summary. On bus, talking about True Yasharel and Christians promoting Rev 29 Euros. Also, kids in school being prepared for drafting and to become Marines. So I have to throw this in there. I forgot to mention, I also said something about how the time of Jacob's trouble was at hand, which actually goes into the whole slave camp thing with only True Yasharel people working in there and dying. And something about how True Yasharel has to go through more persecution to turn back to the Most High, and then some other stuff that I can't really remember with that. And that might have been what actually took off the conversation on the bus, where the girl mentioned her friends' posts that were quote-unquote hateful to the European J3Ws, but she was talking about posts they were making, like the free PAL, those types of posts. And it's actually funny because I remember when I was in 5th grade, like a lot of girls had that in their bio. So like this isn't like a new situation, obviously, but like of course things are taken off for them to have to run out of the land. Death camp plant type thing work of True Yasharel and staff hiding trays of food and putting them to the side for themselves, not the slaves. What I wrote for my dream note, this should actually say way more than this, but I think what it was that when I was in Wi-Fi, I was supposed to get on the Wi-Fi and then get on Google Docs so like it could upload, because I typed up the rest on a computer, but I forgot to actually like update it on my phone. This is making sense, like it has to load and stuff, so actually it's not right there. But pretty much like I remember like seeing the Marine camp thing, and I was accused of like taking a picture to show people, but I actually didn't, and that part's kind of irrelevant. When I have like the rest of it, I'll just put it in the description. But overall, kids are like being manipulatively prepared to be in the Marines, and they weren't like admitting that like it was a Marine type training and boot camp. They were like framing it as something else, to be honest. But there was that. And before that part, I was on this bus, and this one girl, she was going on this rant about how her friends make hateful posts about the Euro J3Ws, and I pretty much said like something along the lines of like how they're not the real people and they don't even believe in like quote unquote God or any of that stuff. And then I'm trying to remember what else happened after that. I can't really remember, but I'll put it in the description. I completely forgot about that. That's a common thing that I have happen with Google Docs, from like going between using like computers to my phone. It's kind of annoying. But this other dream, February 28th, 2026, somewhere from 12 to 3 a.m. I had this, and I woke up right after I had it. And it was so funny because when I got back up that morning, like sometime after 9 a.m., I had got this video that was recommended, and it was a lady talking about how it's been declared, and the video was about how like the war has officially been declared. And that was really interesting because I had this dream, and I think that was the same day. The video was uploaded like that same day. I don't really know what else to say with that, but yeah. So I had woke up. Oh no, I'm saying this all wrong. The dream was like I was watching the news, and I was like, this has to be a dream because I don't watch the news. And I was like, it was like it was being shown on like a news station, and I was like, yeah, this isn't right because I know I don't watch that stuff. And I wrote, war started. I seen bombs drop. People are on fire and screaming. 2 guys wearing white clothes are walking through the fire and smoke and bombing and somehow don't get burned. And it's like I was, I say it was like watching the news because for one, that was the sense that I had, and also it's kind of like watching it from like the camera lens. And I was like, well, news reporters, they don't get that close either, so. But like there was fire and smoke everywhere, and there was like two people were burning, and then like the white robe clothes type dudes were just like walking through all of it. And I was just thinking, well, how are they not like burned or whatever, or like being blown away by the bombs? I hear someone talking in like the background, and I can't really remember if this is supposed to be like on the news or like somebody who is watching the news and seeing this, but I heard someone talking about how Americans claim to be Christians but don't support, I don't even know if I can say this word, but Palestine, if that's how that's spelled, which is the highest concentration of Christian / Messianic Yahudaism, aside from true Yasharel in America, Africa, etc. Americans are supporting a group of people who don't believe in quote-unquote God. the dream seemed as though I was watching something on the news. But yeah, I was hearing a lot of talk about that, like how the Christian nation hates Christians. They hate real Christians. So that's just like what I was hearing a lot about. And this is 100% true. And people are always talking about quote unquote Arabs, but one of the realities is that, for one, none of the people that are fighting, it's not any of their land, but of course there are people that do have like rights to the region, but definitely not the Europeans running around the land, terrorizing people. They've been selling the they were calling them watermelon for short, which I find kind of interesting, but I'm not even gonna go into that. But the Euros running around Northeast Africa, where they've been selling their organs and stuff for years and decades, and pretty much for always. And of course, they traffic their own kids. That's nothing new. I mean, Christopher Columbus, the Hellfire Pedo Ring Club, which was, if I'm remembering right, Benjamin Franklin, Abraham, I forget who all was. I mean, pretty much, shoot, most of these people are in there, but I know Benjamin Franklin and either Thomas Edison, and it was some other people. I know one of them, he had like a lot of kid skeletons in his basement and stuff, and the excuse was that he was a scientist and doctor, quote unquote. But anywho, the point I was getting at is that the watermelon people, they're not actually Arabs or Ishmael. Although I know that like a lot of time with the Arab term is kind of like thrown out or dished out as like a racial or like a race term, because of course like there's all this talk about race semantics, but nobody knows what a race is. Although of course like the race construct is pretty bullcrap, but with the actual race terms made by the Caucasoids, as they call themselves by their race terms, it's actually Negroid, Mongoloid, and Caucasoid. But there were points in times where like there were other off branches which would now just fall under Negroid or Mongoloid, which was Aborigine, which that would pretty much be Negroid, and Pacific Islander was also at one point a race category, but Negroid, Caucasoid, and Mongoloid. Not that any of that stuff is all that real, but those were the three race categories that were made. But now, like, when people think the now called Middle East, they think of that, they think about Arabs. And of course, like a lot of Caucasoids, they can't even tell, like, Eritreans, which are one at their / straight hair Negroids, or a lot of them are. And Ethiopians, which those are Cushites. And a lot of that upper part of Africa used to be called those were the Kushite kingdoms. And what was I getting at really? Oh yeah, but or maybe I already said this, like a lot of Caucasoids, they can't tell Indians from Arabs, because even just like with Mexicans or certain ones, because like some of them, they're like more Spaniard, which Spaniards are European. That would be Caucasoid, technically. But then, it's like a lot of weird stuff, but some of them would definitely fall under Mongoloid. And I know that like Indians, of course, even due to like the continent they're on, they're considered to be Asian, but by the race categories, Asians are Mongoloids, but a lot of people that technically fall under Negroid run under Mongoloid. And so like Caucasoids especially can't tell a lot of these people groups apart, and they get Arabs, Indians, and even often Mexicans mixed up. And I've even met like people that were Mexican when I was in Cali, that even other Mexicans would think that they were Indian. Indian isn't actually Indian, not the Mongolo Native American mix up, not that stuff. But anywho, yeah, so like the watermelon people, they're Canaanites, and when they do a DNA test, they have pure Canaanite DNA. And I even remember seeing like one of these Palestine guys talking about this. They're not Arabs. And yeah, Ishmael has a lot of promises from, they're not true Yasharel, but they still descended from Abram, if I'm remembering right, because it was the whole Hagar slave situation, and the dad that allowed Hagar to be pushed away with the son by the wife Sarah, and that caused its own issues. But either way, that's Ishmael, or the Arabs. And the watermelon people, those are Canaanites. The Canaanites were in the land even before true Yasharel went there, actually. And there was also a lot of like Nephilim mixes of Canaanites that weren't human due to like the fallen angels coming down and like mixing with people and stuff. So there was also a lot of people, giants in the Canaanite land. And I mean, they still have giants there now. Like I've met veterans that have talked about going to Iraq and those different places and going in caves and having giants throw rocks at them and stuff. And not to mention, like, some of these wars were started for the U.S. to go get Nephilim DNA and other stuff, other than all the other stealing of resources. But crap, even when I was in Slab City, I had someone tell me about, like, what I'm guessing would be the Mongoloid Native Americans, and of course not the Negroid American Aboriginals, because that's rarely talked about. Mongoloid Native Americans still, like, were fighting some giants over there or something, a few mountains away. They're on the other side of the mountain or something like that. And that certain Native American tribes still, like, sew the giants' hair into, like, their the clothes that they wear. I was about to say kilts, but that's definitely not what that's called. And trying to think of what else that dude said about that. But yeah, the red-haired giants, which that goes back to what I mentioned in my anthropomorphized video with the carbon-based melanin hybrids and the sulfur-based melanin hybrids. But yeah, so the Canaanites were in the land even before true Yasharel came in, and that's pretty much that. And I'm trying to remember the timeline exactly, but overall, yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I don't really know what to say. Okay, actually, no, I don't know if I talked about this before. I probably did, but I want to throw this in here. So, sometime in 2023 or 2024, but I'm thinking 2024, because I had to throw my dream journal away, like, over a year ago, because, no. Wait, yeah. Because just, like, stuff for, like, the traveling and all that. Just too much bullcrap. But I did have it written down in there. And the summary of it, from what I remember, is that, some girl who was one of these Euros went to jail for making a movie about all the traff that they do, the higher level SRA traff, and etc. And I don't remember all that much about it, but I just remember, like, she made a movie about the traff, the underground stuff, the sewers, and and it's funny because, I know in my last video, or one of the last couple I made about, the dreams, I talked about a couple of traff dreams I had, and, like, them claiming that they were making up excuses for why, like, there were a lot of sewer tunnels and why they were there, and they were like, for just in case anything happens, we can hide the kids in the sewers, And it's like, okay, well, why do you gotta hide the kids in the sewers? And then, over a year or so later, that's when stuff started coming out about the underground. The underground stuff is like really deep. Like inner earth is actually ancient. That's even separate from the new bunker stuff that they're building and the truckers that are going down there and delivering stuff there. But there was like some E-line underground something, and something about an underground highway. The whole thing in New York with where people were like Teenage Mutant Ninja J3Ws, where they were coming out the sewers with the mattresses and the blood and stuff on them. So anywho, yeah, some girl that was one of them ended up going to jail for making a movie about this. Or of this. Like, it was a documentary, really. It wasn't like just like a movie. It was a documentary that she made about, and they took her out. And oftentimes a lot of their own people exposed them. And even, I don't know if I can say the word, but the KHAZAR book, I mean, that was made by one of them. And also people like, once more people started hearing about that, especially like from the Stephen Darby videos, a lot of people, they think about that, but like all of them aren't Turkish. In fact, a lot of them, as I always mention, are Swedish and Irish and German and Russian and Polish. All of them aren't Turkish. But this also does go back to the Caucasoid Mountains and the true Caucasian thing. Even though, like, some lower level Caucasians will try to separate themselves from these people because they're mad that, like, they took all the wealth and stuff. And then some of them also try to separate themselves and say that they hijacked the white race because they know about, like, still the jealousy, but also some of them know about, like, the House of the Dragon and the Nephilim mixing and stuff like that. But generally, most people that consider themselves white do see their self as, like, the same as these people. Like, I mean, they ran the slave trade, so that would mean that, like, other than, like, the immigrant ones, like, most white Americans are of these people. There's plenty of quote-unquote white Americans that do identify as this, but, like, not all of them do. People often think about New York Orthodox. Everyone's not Orthodox. A lot of them are atheists and stuff like that. Or they're just, like, in New Age or whatever. There's plenty that live in Cali. If honestly, like, with the Orthodox, you're never really going to see, like, the girls. You always see, like, the boys out with, like, the dads or whatever. But I noticed when I was in NY that I never saw the girls or even really the women. But when it comes to, like, the typical ones, I mean, they're everywhere. All they are is just, like, European people, so you can't tell them from any other people or any other quote-unquote white people. But I will say, honestly, they're really nice and smart people, though, the lower level ones. As I mention all the time, I've met a couple who've had to or were on the run from, like, their family due to traf, typical human cash cow system stuff. Although with the twist, because of it bleeding into, like, higher level traffic because they were born in. The Italian ones, a lot of those live in the West Coast and the South, etc. I've met one of those ones. And what else was I gonna say with that? I know, like, there's a lot of arguments about the whole Caucasian thing in general because, like, some don't want to be considered Caucasian, and they talk about, like, the difference between the true Caucasians and, like, who really does descend from the Neanderthals and the Vikings and stuff like that. And I mean, there has been a lot of confusion around that. The Transylvanian side, the House of the Dragon, which all that is a part of the serpent seed anyways. I'm trying to think of what else. Crap. Of course, the British, because, I mean, the whole reason that they took over the now called Americas and the land in Northeast Africa is because they're the same colonizers from Britain. That's why, of course, America's going to keep fighting for them because they are a part of America. And Britain, I even seen something about them siding with like Cyprus, which I think is Greece, or is it Cyprus, Syria? Could be getting it mixed up, but I know they're supposed to side with Greece or something at one point. And yeah, these are the same Greco-Romans as well, but it goes extremely back to like the Brits, because it was British colonization of Africa that made the term Middle East come up, and the founding of that land that starts with an I, and the same people, the same Europeans that stole America as well, all the same people. Christopher Columbus, he was an Italian, J3W, all these people, it's all the same people. And it even connects to the Masons as well. But yeah, so, oh yeah, and then the last thing, going back to the Christian church, they send millions of dollars to these people a year, even though they don't like them anyways, because of course, the quote-unquote white people want to support their people that don't like them because they're higher level Caucasians. Same ones in Silicon Valley and stuff like that. These quote-unquote white people like Zuckerberg, any of these Palo Alto people, which even goes into my Gravity Falls breakdown playlist, because that's actually really, really deep, and it goes into this with these people, and like bringing out this fallen angel technology in Palo Alto. That's where a lot of like the main corporations that run all this tech stuff came out of. I also think about Y Combinator as well, which that could be a separate video, I guess, but had to make sure I was still recording. But these are the same people, and they get to higher places than the lower level Caucasians will, because they're not going to let them. And then of course some people say, well, it is quote unquote racism between them and white people, because people sometimes try to play this race semantic game and try to act like they're not white to try to keep this lie going that these aren't European people running around Africa, and they'll try to be like, well, I mean, technically, like, the Irish, they do have the curses of Deuteronomy 28 because they were slaves. And I even remember when I was in Cali and I had this white lady tell me they weren't slaves, they were indentured servants. And that's the same thing Stephen Darby talked about as well. They were indentured servants. And they were, of course, still trapped by other Caucasian people. But one of the things with the race semantics is that some of them are Italian, some of them are Scottish and Swedish and different things like that. And of course, these different groups, these different ethnic groups of now called Caucasoids, never really did like each other. In fact, it wasn't until the white label was made in America where people were giving up their identity as Irish and Italian and stuff like that to be labeled off as white, which of course eventually went into the whole thing with the census, because they wanted to like make it seem like quote-unquote white birth rates were higher than they really are. And that's why it's starting to stop now, but that's why, as I mentioned pretty often, the whole thing started where Mexicans and Africans and Indians will be able to come to America and label themselves off as quote-unquote white, even while being darker than I am. That's why that stuff started, for the census bull crap, because their birth rates have been going down. And that's why they've been wanting to ban abortions, because it was only made for terrestrial and melanated people, and even poor people, but especially melanated people. But a lot of their people have been going and getting those, and it wasn't made for them to go to, which I still have my Margaret essay NGR re-upload from another channel I had that got banned back in like 2020. But I still have that re-upload. It's still up somehow, where she goes on her little Eugen assist rant. And a lot of people are spitting out rhetoric like this these days. From the psychiatry bull crap to the homeless hate, a lot of people are starting to sound like Margaret. And I'm about to make a video about that, maybe like tomorrow, with some screenshots. The usual stuff of people saying these well, not even insane asylums, but these institutions that lock up and drug and torture and essay people and kids and babies and have 2-year-olds on Xanax and stuff, they need to exist because these are quote-unquote criminals. Of course, those people are still in this fake minor crisis, minor bull crap, social justice warrior stuff because of the files and things where people are playing social justice warrior even though people support traf. They just pretend to not support SEX trap even though they try to make it seem like it's just about prostitution and not the story that it is really about. But anywho, people support traf and what's the other thing with that? There's something else. The whole involuntary commit homeless quote-unquote schizophrenics that a lot of people, even niggers who would never profit from it, that are going to be locked up in these same institutions, are literally spitting out so much NAZIS rhetoric. Which reminds me of the other 2 screenshots that I'm going to have in the video that I forgot, which I also use in another video. Some video, it was like a short, I think, can't really remember, of like these people with some disability, I guess like a chromosome abnormality or something, kind of like what people call midgets, but it was different because like they didn't really have limbs. This husband and wife, I guess, they were in wheelchairs. They had been wanting kids and they had some kids, and people were talking about how horrible it was because the babies were suffering and they shouldn't have had kids and stuff like that. And like I had said in my re-upload from a video that I made in maybe 2023 titled When Parents Love Their Kids to Death or something like that, literally, like, the argument does make sense to a certain extent, but saying that somebody, I mean, literally, I don't even know how else to put it. People sound like Margaret, like, literally. It even makes me think about, like, how I've talked about throughout the years, the quote-unquote black queens that go on these pro-PP clinic rants, and they feel like they're supporting women's rights, even though the civil rights movement was overall bullcrap, and there's a big agenda behind that. But generally, I understand, like, obviously, the hatred and the treatment of women due to, like, religion and stuff, and just the generational epigenetic feud of Adam and Eve and stuff. But at the end of the day, people really cared about civil rights, and youth rights would have happened, and youth rights is never going to happen. And the only reason that they're going to pretend to give youth some rights is simply for the Chomo agenda. But the feminist movement was generally for quote-unquote white women, because at the end of the day, the quote-unquote black man didn't have power, and there's just a lot of stuff with that, and it didn't benefit our quote-unquote community at all whatsoever. But what was I about to say? Hold up. But yeah, like, I also know how, like, the feminist thing can go back to feminine goddess worship, but overall, the mainstream feminist agenda was very much a white supremacist agenda. And even the term toxic masculinity is just anti-melanated man. It doesn't really have anything to do with the things that people would think it has something to do with. And you can't really have toxic masculinity when the roles have been reversed, and the women have been masculine, the men have been feminine, even due to just the hormone warfare. And essay isn't masculinity anyways, but overall, they're really, I mean, the roles have just been reversed. There really, on a large scale, is no femininity or masculinity, and there hasn't been for decades. And what else was with that? In fact, as I always say, there are no real men or women. There is no such thing as a child. There is no such thing as an adult. Everything is just like manipulation in the Matrix and mind games. And then I think maybe that was it. Okay, actually no, it's not. Going back to the race semantics, I kind of already mentioned this pretty much, but yeah, so like people had to give up their identity to be considered white. And that's going away now anyways. Like, there's actually viral videos and reactions to these viral videos of quote-unquote white people talking about how on their FAFSA it asks them what type of white they are. Like, are you German, are you French, stuff like that. So, like, the mainstream white label is about to be done away with all over again to a certain extent. And they just pretty much never got along. Like, of course, like, as people should already know, the Northern and Eastern European wars, the Italian versus the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, whatever in the world, the Aryan versus the Italian, the Aryan versus the Scottish person, and even going back to the white-on-white crime mainstream narrative of the whole Adolf situation. It was about Aryans versus serpent seed, so Aryans versus, like, supposed converts, but especially the Swedish, Irish, and German people. The whole Ukraine and Russia and Poland, and it was one other place, war thing. All of that is about how, even well before all this started to take off that's going on now with the wars, they're fighting about getting back into their countries that they really came from. That's what all that stuff was really about. Like, they're from Russia and Ukraine and stuff like that, and they've been fighting for a long time about being able to go back to these countries that they really came from. And of course, since a lot of them are from America, they have family in America because they're the same people that ran the slave trades anyways. Some of them have been coming back or coming to America for the first time. I've even met Turkish ones that actually, they run these some of these youth resource centers because they know how it feels to be horribly tortured and abused and have to run away. And I've met some that literally had to run away from that land that starts with an I and come to America to start a new life and try to hide from their family. I've met some that have came from Canada. A lot of them live in Canada as well. And Canada's known for, like, a lot of culty, weird stuff anyways. And yeah, so I'm trying to think about what else. Like, I even think about this one YouTuber I like, the Truth Tiger dude. He's an Italian one of them, and in fact, last time I checked his page, he had a video that was about to come out where he was collabing with somebody else, and they were Orthodox J3Ws, and I know he's mentioned some of that stuff before, and they're about in that video talk about, like, the ZIO, you know what agenda, which is really, I mean, for one, they created the NAZIS anyways. It stands for National ZIONIST something, can't remember exactly. And of course, everything Adolf learned, he learned from America anyways. Aside from all his stuff like the occult and reverse engineering UFOs, he learned everything he knew from America. And it was these same people in America who ran the slave trades anyways that created these EUG, whatever in the world, assist agendas. Like Margaret, who created the PP clinics to take out poor people, and especially True Yashirel and other melanated people, she was a J3W. And a lot of them are also Masons and Striners and stuff as well, especially Scottish, right? Since a lot of them are Scottish. And then that's pretty much it, I think, now. So yeah, of course they're going to be like, well, they're not really quote-unquote white people, or some of them at least, because some of them are Swedish and stuff, and certain groups of Europeans have never liked Swedish people. And I know there's also, like, the true Caucasian versus Mediterranean thing. I know I've mentioned before that, like, when it came to, like, the Greco-Roman stuff, like, the now called quote-unquote white people with brown hair consider the ones with blonde hair to be barbarians, and it was a lot of stuff with that. So they've always had these ethnic wars as all people have had, because the whole race construct is very new. People of different ethnicities generally never really did get along that much. Like, that's why now they try to do the whole black or African thing, even though the black label wasn't even made originally for Africans. It was made for a certain group of people. Like, Africans were never quote-unquote black till very recently. Still, typically, they're not quote-unquote black, but the label wasn't made for them. But now they try to do the whole confusion thing with the whole you're African stuff. Like, there's literally Caucasian people that have YouTube channels pretending to be different groups of melanated people, especially now called quote-unquote black people, and they have these YouTube videos of fake DNA tests saying where African Americans come from, and then, like, they'll literally, like, I remember I've made comments about, how a lot of us are Northeast African, as it would now be called, now called Africa, and, then they'll have a reply with a link to their video saying, no African Americans or black Americans are not Northeast African, and then they'll have link to the video saying different fake blood test bull crap. And it's Euro J3Ws and even just other European people making these types of videos and or channels and accounts. It's just a bunch of manipulation, which also makes me think about something else. I remember, like, this was years ago, when people started to accuse everybody being in BHI after the whole Kanye bull crap, that controlled opposition mess. Like, even people that been knew history and aren't a part of any organization, now if you know real history, even if you're not even talking about the Hebrew thing, you'll be accused of being in BHI, or maybe even of being a Hotep now. But I seen this one comment once, and it was like, black people are now starting to gain the same superiority complex that's been used to oppress them and keep them down for generations, and it's scary. And it's like, that was a really wild comment, but it does show how people really feel about people waking up to true history. Like, I even remember around that time even seeing videos of, like, the Mongoloid Native Americans like figuring out, like, their ethnic origins and stuff, and like finding out, oh, I'm a native, and I was always told that I was this because my parents didn't want me to know, because they didn't want me to be tortured for it. And I know one video that really comes to mind. This kid didn't even live in America. He lived in, like, maybe South America, maybe Colombia. I can't really remember. I have actually met a Colombian that looked just like a Mongoloid Native American. That was really interesting, though. And it's really hard to find them in a lot of places. I know I met one in GA, but I know a lot live in Arizona. But there's been so much division between the Mongoloid Native Americans and the Black American Aboriginals, or quote-unquote black as they're now called. And that's been done by design as well, because they want to keep trying to get you to refute whatever your ethnic origin is for each individual ethnic group. And they always try to do that whole African thing, which that's such a wide range label, and they want you to run to Africa expecting random ethnic groups to greet you with open arms that you have no connection to. But overall, life started in Africa, so I mean, everybody would go back to there, but they try to, like, play that game. Like, I even remember this one really popular channel with two Mongoloid Native Americans. They were going on these, like, pretendian rants because of the division that's been caused because of the division that's been caused because of the white supremacist program, and to where people are even having these arguments. And they were like, you need to accept your, not to me, but to other people, you need to accept your African origins. And then one lady was like, you need to accept your African origins. And she's not wrong, because they descend from there just like everyone else does. And it's just so funny to me, because when I was in Cali, there's so many, like, hippie Caucasian people running around claiming to be Native American. And I noticed that like these Mongolian Native Americans that have been set against Negro American Aboriginals never confront them. They've been taught to play the usual discredit the quote-unquote black person game, which is all a part of really trying to be white adjacent. But like there's so many Caucasian people in California running around taking their babies and stuff to nude beaches and living in these nudist cults, essaying their kids and stuff, and claiming this because they're quote-unquote Native American and it's the culture, when they're obviously not Native American and don't look Native American whatsoever, and they're literally just like making up excuses to have their babies at nude beaches. Like I even had a lady tell me, I've heard all types of stories to be honest about these places in Cali and outside of Cali, but I had this one lady tell me about how like when she was 15 she would just like have to sit on the couch with a pillow covering her, and there was like this one dude in the nudist cult who was always riding a bike naked, and like supposedly like his testicles got stuck in like the tire almost or something, like the metal rim part thing, and then I don't know, it was like some weird stuff that really did make me wonder though, like is that really how that goes? I actually had somebody, I wasn't told this in Cali, I was told this in the South, but I had someone in Cali make a joke about like the nudist cult thing, and she was like they walk up to each other, two guys in the nudist cult walk up to each other and they hug each other, but they're like really old and like their testicles like just like wrap around each other, and it's just like some weird stuff. But yeah, so there's that. And I also noticed that like aside from the rock agenda, that's also a big excuse for what I like to call the Caucasian addict projection, or how the hippie movement and overall the Caucasian community's drug issues have been made the face of homelessness. And I noticed that like a lot of them will say, oh well, I do meth and heroin because I'm Native American and it's a part of the culture and it's a part of like connecting to my inner self and all this weird stuff. But yeah, it's so interesting because like I feel like there's even more Caucasian people running around saying that they're Native American, well of course still admitting that they're Swedish, Irish, and German, as these people always love to do, these Swedish, Irish, and German people that love to claim to be so many things that they aren't. I feel like there's more of them that I've seen personally than even Negro American Aboriginals that even know their ethnic identity. Like I know I don't really like the celebrity examples, but I know there's like a lot of Negro American Aboriginals in Louisiana and also Virginia and West Virginia, and I know that Snoop Dogg is one of them. He's one of the first ones that come to mind. I've met a couple, but there's just been a lot of like brainwashing. But there's a lot of connections as well with these different ethnic groups, and even like Bantus, Judah tribe, and even some of them like come to the Americas pretty early. But it's all really interesting. I know like I seen this one video from Mine Unveiled talking about vampires from Transylvania in North Carolina or something like that, and them claiming to be natives too or something. I can't remember exactly, but I guess you'd have to argue who got here first, the giants or the vampires. Ignore background noise. And so then, yeah, so those are like some things that come to mind. The watermelon people do have true Canaanite DNA. There's a lot of mixing, of course, but as some of them who know this will tell you, they're not necessarily Arabs. I feel like the Arab term has just been like really widely used. I know some identify as like Eurasian in that region or further up, and like I know I mentioned in other videos the Caucasiatic thing, and like how Elon is very obviously like one of these like Russian Polish mix of these people. He's probably a Nephilim too as well. A lot of those higher up people are. Or people always say reptilian, but like the Nephilim term is kind of like, or at least hybrid, I guess, is kind of like a wide range term where you don't know exactly which breed of hybrid Zuck and these other people are. I remember that video where he was like he was talking about how he was human, or he had to backtrack and be like, well, I am human. So yeah, but this is just really interesting. And I know there's plenty of videos that are really, really old of like the watermelon people, and even Ethiopians that are in Messianic Yahudaism, or that have true Yashrael DNA, like getting spit on by these European J3Ws for being Christians and stuff like that. So it is really interesting. And that was definitely something that stuck out to me. That part of the dream about the whole Americans claiming to be Christians but don't support the high concentration of Christian. Like, they literally do carry Messianic Yahudaism on their back in that region. And then, yeah, I think maybe that's really it.